Order in the court. Well, welcome everybody to our January 26th meeting of the Manatee County Bar Association. We want to start, as is traditional, with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Judge Smith has agreed to lead us. So if you would, Judge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Judge Farrent's still working the crowd, I see. Our other judges in attendance today, as you saw, Gilbert Smith, we have Judge Henderson, Judge Moreland, Judge Mercurio, Judge Farrent's, Judge Aren, and Judge Doyle. So welcome, judges. Hope I got everybody. And we also have one of our special guests, Greg Bussell, is in attendance. Greg, if you would stand up for a minute. Thanks for coming. Greg is an old friend, and a lot of y'all know him from his insurance days. And his wife is got Alzheimer's, and he's a caregiver, and wanted to be here today. We're glad he's here. So thank you, Greg, for attending. All right, today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to have a three-member panel, and they'll be introduced. Faith will introduce them in a minute. They will each have about 10 minutes to give a presentation to everybody. And afterwards, they're going to stay for some questions that we've put together, questions that have been submitted ahead of time. So I'll just ask the questions through that part of the program. For our announcements in business, I just wanted to let everybody know we have something sad. Stanley Schwartz passed away yesterday, which was a longtime member of this association at age 87. And Stan was still actively practicing. And from my understanding, it was a sudden thing. And so keep the family in your thoughts and prayers. I believe James Carter is going to be the inventory attorney for matters, so keep that in mind. He apparently had about 30 active files still going. Thank you to our annual sponsors, Westminster Communities of Bradenton, who've brought in this art that I hope everybody's had a chance to look at or will, from residents that will be on display at the courthouse afterwards. Bar Prep Hero, South State Bank, Law Pay, Firkins Automotive, Lucente Associates, Porges, Hamlin, Knowles, and Hawk, and Barnes Walker. We're excited to welcome two new sponsors, NOTA by M&T Bank, and Let's Bobo and Telfair. So thank you to our sponsors. They're what help keep us going. METV is also here filming today's event. Thank you, Charles Clapsaddle and the METV team. Please enjoy your lunch as we move through the program. Today's luncheon is entitled Understanding Alzheimer's, a Symposium, and there is CLE credit available. You can pick up your certificate for course credit, I believe, with Grace Ann as you leave today's meeting. Again, the art that's on display was produced by residents at Westminster Communities of Bradenton. I know personally, for some reason, as we age, we get better at art. You're good at the beginning and you're good at the end. The artwork's part of a multi-generational exhibit at the Judicial Center and is sponsored in part by a grant from the Florida Bar to our Young Lawyers Division. So thank you, YLD, for that. The artwork will be added to the 5th floor exhibit at the Judicial Center, where it'll join student artwork from Manatee County students from the public schools. Please make sure you've been opening and reading your weekly e-blast, emails from the association, etc. That's how the association communicates. And now for the YLD Hot Minute, Dustin Wagner.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dustin Wagner, president of the Manatee YLD. My hot minute was going to be about the artwork that was on display, so thank you for stealing my thunder. But having said that, for folks that don't know, February 9th, the YLD is going to do a new members pizza luncheon. It's going to be at the Judicial Center. It's going to be on the first floor in the Board of Directors conference room. So for folks that have new associates that want to be either part of the Big Bar or the YLD, please let them know to sign up for that. After, it's going to be a quick little pizza lunch, and then after that, we're going to do a quick tour of the courthouse. The goal there is, for new attorneys to the area, maybe that'll help alleviate some stress and be less intimidating when you're going in front of Judge Mercurio. So that's it. Thank you.
That'll never happen.
They really did have something to do with the artwork. So, thanks, Dustin. With that, we're ready to start our program. So, Faith, if you'll come up, and she will introduce the speakers. And if the speakers would come up and give their presentations from the table up here. Do you already have this?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay. Thank you.
We are very pleased to introduce Dr. Michael Milan, who is the Executive Director and co-founder of the Roskamp Institute. Dr. Mike Milan is an internationally recognized authority and expert on Alzheimer's disease and related neurodegenerative disorders. He was trained as a physician in the UK, receiving his medical degree from the Royal Free Hospital, London University, and later gained a PhD also from London University. He was co-discoverer of the first known genetic cause of Alzheimer's disease in the early 1990s. In the UK and subsequently in the US, he specialized in the diagnosis and treatment of Alzheimer's disease. He has co-authored over 300 papers on Alzheimer's disease and related disorders, on many of which he served as senior author. He has held positions as professional chair and a professor of psychiatry, neurology, and pathology. He is the executive director and co-founder of the Roskamp Institute, a non-for-profit, standalone biomedical research institute funded primarily by nationally competitive grants from the National Institute of Health, the Veterans Administration, and the Department of Defense. His scientific work has focused on the development of new treatments for inflammatory brain disorders, with the ultimate goal of reducing the burden of human suffering associated with these diseases. The first drug to be based on the discoveries he and his colleagues made in the 1990s was approved by the FDA last year. Other similar drugs will likely also be approved, representing the first new treatment for Alzheimer's in over 16 years. Can we please welcome Dr. Michael Milan? Joining Dr. Milan, we have Mr. Jim Polowski. Mr. Polowski has over 25 years of experience in a variety of leadership roles with strong skills in operations, team building, and project development. He received a BA in business management from DeSales University and is a licensed nursing home administrator. He joined the Westminster Community of Florida organization in 2014. Jim is currently serving as the Senior Vice President of Operations and oversees 11 CCRCs, 12 affordable housing communities, home care operations, and clinical services. Please welcome Mr. Jim Polowski. And finally, we have Michelle Hall. After graduating from Mount Holyoke College in 1989, Michelle Hall worked as a paralegal for Cravath, Swain, and Moore in New York City for 2 years. Michelle graduated from Vanderbilt Law School in 1995. She and her family moved to Bradenton in 1997, and she was admitted to the Florida bar the same year. She served as an attorney for Grimes, Goebel, and Dietrich for a number of years, and Michelle was also the attorney for the city of Palmetto for 6 years. Most recently, Michelle served as the general counsel for the Manatee County Sheriff's Office for 10 years before retiring in 2020. Please welcome Michelle Hall. I'll turn the presentation over to you guys now.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Let me try to condense 35 years' work into 10 minutes. Should be easy. But actually, I think we've got the highlights already. My career started by the inheritance of 30 wards of 30 Alzheimer patients, essentially, in a large Victorian hospital in the UK. And that was a fairly striking introduction to Alzheimer's disease, as you might imagine. The terminal phases of Alzheimer's are unpleasant. You end up, moribund with all sorts of complications. And it struck me at the time that we really needed to understand this disease, given that even then it was known that it was increasing in frequency in most populations. And so my next encounter, after I started to work on a PhD in genetics, which was the way to kind of tackle understanding diseases in those days, I was coming across people just like Michelle. And actually, it's amazing to be here with somebody like Michelle who would come forward as an early onset case of Alzheimer's, because it was folks just like her that actually changed the face of research in Alzheimer's. I started looking at families multiply affected with early onset Alzheimer's, so folks that get the disease in their late 40s, early 50s. And within 2-3 years, we found the first genetic cause. We found that the reason in those particular pretty rare families that people were getting Alzheimer's was absolutely because of a change in a gene that codes for a protein called amyloid. So amyloid is a small protein that we all make, actually months before we're born. We're all making it right now. It does some specific things in the brain. We're still not clear what it does, but we know, and usually you can't see it. You can't see it on scans. But for whatever reason, in some people, it starts to accumulate. And as it accumulates, it turns into a toxic substance. And so, as was noted, for years, at that time, we said to ourselves, great, we found the cause of Alzheimer's. Within 5 years, we'll have treatments, because all we have to do is get rid of amyloid. 30 plus years later, we're still trying to nail down the specific form of amyloid that we have to get rid of, we have to eliminate to stop the disease. Because it turns out that amyloid goes through these different transformations. And if you just take out the big clumps of it that you can see on PET scans, it doesn't actually do anything. You can remove the amyloid and you continue to lose cognitive abilities. So there are other forms of amyloid, invisible forms, but toxic forms. We know how to detect them. What we really need now are better drugs to take them out of the system. Now, Biogen's drug that was mentioned was the first one, and it was the first one approved by the FDA that attempts to do that, which is an amazing step forward. I think the drugs that follow on, maybe the Lilly drug that we're testing now and others, will be better still. So I think we're starting to nibble away at Alzheimer's from the amyloid perspective. There's another protein that amyloid triggers called tau. It's downstream of amyloid. But that's been targeted too. And I'm very hopeful that a combination of anti-tau and anti-amyloid treatments, which should all be coming online in relatively short time now, will be helpful. While all this has been going on, and we've been spending our lives trying to nail amyloid and tau, we've learned a tremendous amount about the risks for Alzheimer's disease. And it turns out that there are a lot of other things that are in some ways a lot easier to work with and to adjust to reduce our risk. So we now know that diet, exercise, mental exercise and use of our brains, and the control of really common medical conditions have a massive impact on our personal risk for Alzheimer's, even if you have a genetic predisposition. And at the Roskamp Institute, most of the scientists there spend their time trying to understand why things like diabetes so much increase the risk for Alzheimer's disease, particularly if it's uncontrolled, and why things like exercise are so protective against Alzheimer's. We're trying to understand at the molecular level, so that whatever it is at the molecular level, we can enhance that either by medications or by a change in diet, nutritional supplements, and so on. So we spend most of our days trying to find drugs, and actually we've taken drugs from the bench all the way through clinical trials from the Institute. But it turns out that there are a lot more targets than just Alzheimer's disease, and I'm very hopeful that in the next few years we'll be able to reduce those, hopefully to some medications as well, not just advising people about diet and exercise, but actually reduce them to medications where we can target the beneficial molecules in the brain that fight Alzheimer's and target the ones that put us at increased risk. So that's 35 years' work in 10 minutes, so thanks so much.
I don't have anything nearly as important as this. What I have done for the last few years has been trying to get the word out. And the way to get the word out usually is to let people see a little bit of what I see and what my life is like. So I'm going to try to give you a little insight on how this works. I am 54 years old. I live with my family in Bradenton. In the fall of 2020, I was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's disease. For 10 years, I served as general counsel for the Manatee County Sheriff's Office. I loved that job and I loved the people that I worked with. However, the last year there, I began to notice changes. In meetings, I was struggling to come up with my words. I would blurt out words that had nothing to do with the conversation, and I constantly had to have people repeat things for me over and over and over. Still, I didn't see that there was a problem. It's just one of those things, when you're in it, you don't see it. Time passed a little bit. I hurt my hand and I needed to see a doctor. I was asked to complete new patient forms, and I realized that I couldn't fill out the paperwork. And for me, a lot of it is what it looks like. The way it looked to me was just lines like this when I was trying to sit down and do that paperwork. I decided to take a rest and try to spell the word cup. And I couldn't do it. I knew what a cup was, but I didn't know how to spell it. So I sat down for a moment, probably more than 2 moments, and tried it again. And I kind of just said to my brain, come on, what are you doing? Let's go. Didn't happen. It didn't happen, and it was very clear that my brain was not working the way it should, and I had like a major freak out, because nothing has ever just stopped me in my tracks like that, where I couldn't come out with anything, and that's what happened. A little bit later, I saw a series of medical providers. I had CTs, MRIs, PET scans. I was told many, many times by a lot of people that the confusion was because of stress. One neurologist even told me that my scan looked great, everything's fine, you should go home and have a Merry Christmas. I mean, for that person, that's what he said. Dissatisfied with what we were being told, my husband Doug and I decided to make a visit to the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville. A neurologist there ruled out several possibilities for my cognitive impairment. and confirmed the early onset Alzheimer's diagnosis with a lumbar puncture. The spinal fluid revealed the presence of a protein associated with the disease. I was completely stunned. It's one of those things where you think it cannot ever, ever go that far. I mean, I'm too young, there's always another reason, and they couldn't find it, and this is what I ended up with. I was stunned, I was unprepared for the diagnosis, even though I should have known it was coming. I wanted to run away, and I actually wanted to take my own life. I mean, at that point, you see your life going away altogether, so why not just kill yourself? That was a tough, I'd say, month or two. But after the initial shock of the diagnosis, after it wore off, I knew that I had to discuss this with my 3 adult children. I needed to assure them that I would be in their lives for as long as possible, and I would do everything I could to slow down the progression of this disease. I wanted as much time with my family as I could get. For now, I enjoy spending lots of time with my family, with my dogs, especially. We're together all the time now. However, some tasks have become difficult for me, like writing and working with numbers, ordering from Amazon, following a recipe, or getting money from an ATM. These are things that my brain doesn't let me do. I always have to call somebody. Soon, I will not be able to drive. This scares me because it's one more way that I will lose my autonomy. I've become an advocate for the Alzheimer's Association. This includes participating in group calls, working with the media to help raise awareness of the disease, and speaking to lawmakers about the importance of additional funding, as well as providing more education to the physician community regarding the signs of Alzheimer's. I received my first dose of Aduhelm last year. This drug was recently and controversially approved by the FDA. It is the only FDA-approved drug on the market designed to slow the progression of early-stage Alzheimer's. My infusions will continue monthly, and I will be closely monitored for any side effects. There are several other companies that are working to come up with a similar drug. I read all that I can about the disease, trying to absorb what each stage means to me. There are moments I wish I didn't know these facts. I know time is not on my side, and that I have to find that balance between acceptance and hope. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so it's tough to follow that, right? So, Michelle, good for us to hear your story, and thank you so much for being courageous to share it. So, thank you. My name's Jim Polowski. The layout of this room, I've prepared a PowerPoint, so you will be unable to gaze upon me if you want to see the good things in the PowerPoint. Somebody's moving it along for me. Very good. So, go ahead. Just a little bit about Westminster. We are a nonprofit organization. We're all over the state of Florida, and our numbers and counts were talked about before. So we heard a little bit about other things today. I'm talking today about how, as an industry, as an organization within the industry, how we are caring for people with memory support issues. And I'm going to talk primarily about the environment, the program, and the care. So this, we've heard this before, but we've always done it this way. I think it's an important thing to say because as soon as you say that, you know you're justifying doing something the wrong way. So we've evolved as we've been doing this as an industry and as an organization, and probably what I'm telling you about today will not be the way that we do it 5 years from now. So just along those lines. So first, in the environment. Most important with the environment is that it's home-like. People want to live in a home. They don't want to live in an institution. They don't want long hallways and things that feel like the hospital. They want it to be as much like or even better than their home was when they were living there. We like the circadian rhythm method to try to keep your days and nights separated, and we use, you can do that artificially with lighting, and you can also do it with natural light. We intentionally have the small house approach so that we have small groups of people within a larger building, but that it feels very much like a small home, and you become very familiar with your surroundings and the people around you. Flexibility is the most important thing because each person is different and each person needs to be treated differently. And even in their journey, they will change from the beginning to end. And then I'll talk a little bit about how we try to use technology as well. So this is our newest version of our design for memory support. And what's interesting here is what you'll see to the right and to the left is living spaces, the units that they have. They're all private rooms, and then in that blue section is core areas to the business, such as the nurse's station. And the nurse's station is not a nurse's station. It's literally a desk like you would have in your home or your office out in the middle of the living room to be shared by all. Then there's laundry, med rooms, and stuff like that. In the center is pretty much the main living room area, and you can kind of see that the curved area is a kitchen counter, which looks exactly like the kitchen in your home. So when you're in the dining room eating or sitting at the counter waiting for some toast or coffee, you are essentially being and feeling just like you're in your home. The back of the house is where the actual food is cooked and prepared, but you wouldn't know that from experiencing that out front. Next slide. This is just a little depiction of all of the areas that we've allowed natural light to enter the building, and this does not even include, obviously, the windows in the units. This is our actual dining room table. You can see it's very much like the dining room table in your home, except we've intentionally used darker colored plates because that's beneficial, and the chairs are all very senior sized and friendly. This is a picture of our bedroom in our newest model, and you can see it's quite spacious. It's not a single bed. It's a bed like you would have in your own home, and all the furnishings are very much like you would have at home. And certainly, these are our furnishings, but if a person wanted to bring their own, we would certainly get ours out of the way to allow you to do so. While it looks like a regular bed, we try to take into everything to be intelligent about the way that we plan things. So this is an overhead depiction of the bedroom, and what I'm trying to show here is that we've designed the room so that when a person is in the bed, they can actually see the toilet. And you might think to yourself, I don't want to see the toilet while I'm in bed, but if you wake up at some point and need to go to the bathroom and you might just struggle a little bit with remembering, right in front of you is that toilet for you to see. And we have a special lighting in the bathrooms that allows it to be lit all the time, but not like an overhead light or a night light that would be burdensome. This is one of our living spaces. We have several living spaces all throughout the house, and the point of that is to have places where larger groups can gather, but also very much smaller groups of residents or places for their families to meet outside of their bedrooms. This is just a depiction here of how the living and dining room spaces and then the activity family spaces are all spread throughout. So at some point, people with memory support problems or dementia like to wander. So I just thought it would be interesting to show you here how there's like that circular pattern around the core, and you can wander in your side of the house. You can wander through your side of the house and out into the garden and back in. And you can wander all through the garden, all through the house at different times of the day. So there's plenty of room and space to allow you to get your exercise. Some people feel the need to walk. And they can do that without having to ask permission to go through a door, without entering an unsafe area, and without feeling trapped. So when you're wandering, though, you do want to eventually get back to your unit, right, and know where you're at. So we've designed it very specifically. Each side of the house has a specific color and a specific decoration pattern. And then what you're seeing here is the doors to the rooms. Outside of the doors to the rooms, we've placed a curio cabinet. And people and their families can put in those curio cabinets items that are specific to them and meaningful to them that they'll recognize, help them find their way back to home, also help them to have good conversations. It's a way to connect with other residents. It's a way to connect with team members and visitors. Once you get inside of the door, you can see there's another set of shelves that helps guide them in that way as well. The curio cabinets on the outside are locked so that people that might want to manipulate your things cannot. I showed that you could go outside. When you go outside, this is a depiction of where you would be. The entry areas at the top and the bottom of the screen are actually the doors that go into those two halves of the houses. So you can see as you wander out of one section, you can wander into another. You can meander about the garden. In the garden is a butterfly garden, a water feature, but the water feature doesn't have any way to actually fall in or become entrapped or have any kind of issues like that. There's a garden where you can plant things that you might want to grow and eat. Everything within the area is non-toxic, so there's no risk of having any issues like that. But it's just a great place to be. There's different sections out there that might appeal to different people. This is a picture of the outside of our most recent building. It is up in Tallahassee, and it's winter, so it's a little not green. But it does show you how the pathways go around, and you can see the water feature there. There's even an outdoor fireplace that's electric that people can enjoy. So talking about the care and programming, I mean, the most important thing that we want to do is have individualized care for the person and preserve their dignity. No matter what stage of the disease process you're in, people know and sense dignity, and they absolutely deserve it, and it's our highest goal to make sure that we're honoring that. We talked about circadian lighting to preserve the day and the night, but also the process of daily living. So breakfast is in the morning, lunch is in the afternoon, but people are different, so we actually have food 24 hours a day. Unlike other places you might go, breakfast is not at 8 o'clock. When you wake up, you can have breakfast. When you decide you're hungry for dinner, you can have dinner. Certainly we try to keep those areas around to keep that rhythm going and your camaraderie, but we try to focus on what the resident needs specifically at that time. We talked about not being institutional. It should be about your home. If you have preferences, we try to honor those preferences however they are. We try to treat the whole person. So we obviously want to take care of their tasks of daily living that they need help with, bathing, grooming, housekeeping, any medical things that they have, getting to the doctor, getting their medicines, etc. But really, more importantly for us in this program, the mind, the body, and the spirit. How can we help them be fulfilled and be happy, be contented, and be productive in the best way that they can? So these are not all technologies that we use, but I thought they were kind of cool. So there's so much technology out there today that we can't even speak about it. A couple of the pieces of technology that we are using now is a wearable device, kind of depicted in the middle there. That wearable device lets us know where anybody is in the building at any time. They can also push that button if they need help. If they fall, it lets us know that they've fallen and they need help. So it's a lot different than it used to be with pull cords all over the walls. Additionally, it's the access control system. So during the day, it lets all those doors be open, that they can go outside and everything. In the evening at a certain time, the other doors might become not accessible, but they can continue to do that and at the times that are appropriate for them. This is a piece of technology that we're actually using now. It's a program that we purchase, and those are touchable screens. And you can see that you can take tours of Italy, you can take tours of other places, farms, things that might be more familiar with certain people or bring them peace and hope. And you can also take quizzes, exams, there's mind games and things like that that you can help play, and it can be used by groups as well as individuals. Additionally, we've been doing a lot lately with the iPad for those same very reasons, as well as visits with family near and far. So the other piece that is most important in this is obviously people. We try very hard to make sure we have the right people in the program, residents that will benefit from being in the program and meet the certain criteria. And we, most importantly, try to make sure that we have the right people working there. We do a predictive index, which is a personality testing that we've taken our best caregivers, and particularly then again, caregivers in the memory support setting, and created a program that helps us determine personalities that are best associated with working in that setting. Obviously, training is very important, and it's not just training in the tasks of daily living, as most caregivers are, but in understanding the processes of the disease, as well as ways to care and ways to engage with them. We have a special dining program. Interestingly, our dining program in other levels of care is all based on choice. In the memory setting, we try to limit those choices, because choices at a certain stage become burdensome on people and cause distress. So we certainly have other options if people generally don't like what we're having that day, but we try to keep the choices to a minimum. If they don't like it, they're not eating it, there's some reason to believe they don't like it, we have other things to place in front of them. We also have what we call a small bites program, which is as people forget how to use their utensils or knives, etc., these are things that you can eat with your fingers that are attractive and delicious and in a dignified way, such as hors d'oeuvres and things like that. And obviously the family is a big part of determining the care. The staff that we have, you can see there, we've clustered their work areas and their activity areas right in the midst of the living spaces. So they're not in the back of the house hiding, they're right out amongst all of the residents all day long. So other than that, I would say that we have support groups for our residents and their family members in this care level, and we certainly encourage people within our system and from without our system to get those support groups and help. And that concludes my presentation.
Thanks, everybody. This is an ambitious program. Y'all are doing great. So I'll have to confess that we leaked the questions to the panel. So I was going through as they spoke and hoping they didn't cover every single one of them. And Michelle, you did. So you get a pass right now. So I'll start. I've just got a couple for each. Dr. Milan, can you talk for a minute about the different kinds of dementia?
Sure. So dementia is a catch-all phrase that is not really a diagnosis. Dementia just means that you have two cognitive problems in your brain. Could be memory, could be use of language, plus it's starting to affect your work or your social interactions. That's the definition of dementia. So there are many, many different types of dementia. And one of the reasons that we always urge people to come for assessment early if there are cognitive problems, memory problems or otherwise, is because many, many types of dementia are completely treatable and completely reversible. So it's really worth, if people don't, people sometimes make the assumption, even general practitioners and others make the assumption that things are Alzheimer's. You need a full and careful assessment. There are people that have been sitting in nursing homes, unfortunately, for years, that with minor operations or a change in their thyroid medications go home. So they're still out there, we still see them. So Alzheimer's is a very specific type of dementia, and it is caused for the reasons I mentioned earlier. But there are lots of others that aren't necessarily reversible, but they can certainly be stopped in their tracks. Vascular dementia is a good example of that. Oftentimes people have vascular dementia because they're throwing off clots from atrial fibrillation, which is one of the biggest culprits. If you stop the atrial fibrillation, you stop the clots, you stop the dementia. It's as simple as that. So a GP can solve that problem, and certainly a cardiologist. So yeah, that's the basic definition.
Thank you. Jim, in your industry, you referred to memory support, I believe?
Yes.
So could you speak for a minute of kind of what that includes and how the industry works with the different levels of people that have these different stages, like the doctor's talking about?
Happily, yes. So Westminster, we take care of people of independent living, assisted living, and nursing home level, all within the same campus. So we have people with all stages of dementia. Some of them are in independent living. We have a health resource nurse on our campus that helps to guide them along and make sure they have the resources available that they might need. And with family support or home care, they can easily stay in their home and live a great life as long as they wish. After that, we have assisted living, which is assistance with your tasks of daily living. And then within the assisted living, we have a specialized memory care section, which is what I described to you today, where it's a lot more programming around how to help people with dementia or memory support needs. And then obviously, once they are more in need of physical care, then the memory potentially become incapacitated, can't walk, et cetera, then they would go to the skilled level of care.
I'll stay with you for a minute because it's kind of connected. During your career so far, I believe the one you showed in Tallahassee is kind of state of the art, I would imagine. What have you seen changes over the years of how people with memory care needs, how they lived, and problems that the industry was encountering, and how that's being addressed by what you're showing us as a better way?
So I think the biggest piece of that question, Steve, is dignity. I mean, the people that have memory care issues are treated now with dignity, where, I want to say 30, 40 years ago, the focus was more on safety, and safety might have restricted their ability to walk, or they might have been put in what looks like a big chair with a laptop on that they couldn't get out of. So this way gives them free access to meander and walk around and enjoy all the things that they can do, helps them keep their tasks of daily living and their abilities longer. And I think the biggest piece is really treating people with dignity.
Thank you. Doctor, you spoke about some encouraging studies on diet and exercise. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're still trying to nail down the exact diet, which is the one we should all be on to prevent Alzheimer's or reduce it. But most work has been done on the so-called Mediterranean diet. So I think everybody knows what that is from multiple other studies of diseases, particularly cardiovascular diseases, where Mediterranean diets are known to be helpful. But in essence, it is less fatty meats, less dairy food, more fish oils, DHA, EPA, and vegetables, fruits, all of those things. It's very interesting that metabolism and our ability to metabolize sugar and fat changes throughout life, often to our detriment. Neurons become progressively unable to use sugar, then they try using fats, and when that doesn't work, we start to get real problems. One of the effects of a very common gene that we all have, and it comes in 3 variants, 2, 3, and 4, it's called the Apoe gene. One of the effects of having an ApoE4 is to increase our risk really quite dramatically for Alzheimer's. And that's probably working through changes in our ability to metabolize sugar and lipids. So at the Institute, we work a lot on that. The exercise story is really phenomenal. It's extraordinary how much the risk for Alzheimer's can be reduced by exercise. And we still don't really have an idea why. We used to think it was because of the release of factors that could cause neurons to keep growing, a particular molecule called BDNF, but actually it looks like it's way more than that. So we and others are really working hard on that. It'd be nice to get that in a pill, because then we wouldn't have to recommend high-intensity interval training and things like that. But actually the data's out there suggesting that almost any exercise is helpful. Walking, there was just a very well-known study done in New York where people were walking an extra 4 blocks a day, and you look at their risk over the years for Alzheimer's, and it's there, very statistically significant. So yeah, I hope you all exercise to some level, and in any exercise, walking is better than doing nothing. It's very important.
I bet if I asked who's on a diet now, I'd get more hands. Thank goodness it's the Mediterranean diet.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. There's red wine's involved in that allowance.
That's good news to everybody. Real quick follow-up, but have you seen, well, it's kind of 2 things for the doctor. Any significance in gender on who seems to come down with these, and also difference in where you live, like different countries? Have you seen any difference?
So the gender story went back and forth, but in the overall thinking is that women may be at more risk than men. Originally, that was just thought to be because women live longer in general than men, but actually it does look like a real difference. The estrogen story in that regard is really interesting. It looks as if women on postmenopausal hormone replacement treatment were less at risk, but all the intervention studies using HRT as an intervention didn't pan out. And that's very similar to the non-steroidal story, actually. If you look at overall risk for use of anti-inflammatories, then people that take anti-inflammatories are less at risk. But then if you do an intervention with it, which we and others did, we couldn't find a statistical effect in a clinical trial. Where people live, one of the interesting signals comes from India, actually, from the use of curcumin. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. So that's the 3rd leg of the stool that I didn't mention. So we have amyloid, we have tau, this downstream protein that accumulates in neurons and destroys them. The 3rd leg is inflammation. Any type of brain inflammation makes Alzheimer's worse. So there are many things that contribute to brain inflammation. Obviously, strokes is one of them. Head injury is obviously another. But we find that, and so some of the drugs that we're developing now are specifically aimed at lowering inflammation. So that's probably where the diet story comes from and why you see differences. It's intrinsic use of anti-inflammatories in the diet.
So you probably had a lot of curry in Britain growing up.
Plenty.
Jim, what advice would you give to family members, and also can you speak on options of people with limited resources if they have a family member?
So I suppose my biggest advice to family would be to get support and have a good family support group or outside support group. They can be available. You can, there's system ones and then there's personal ones. They're very important. And I think taking care of the caregiver is a focus that we've had for a while now. A lot of times the caregiver will actually find themselves ending up in a nursing home or hospital long before the person that they're caring for. So very important for them to have a support system and somebody to talk to. We partnered with, through USF, what we call Powerful Tools for Caregivers, which is a 12-week training program for the caregivers themselves to be able to take care of themselves and recognize some of the challenges that they're having. It's kind of like the airplane. If you got to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help those people around you. What was the second half of the question, Steve?
No.
See how that works?
Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
I forgot. The advice for families with limited economic resources.
So there's not a lot out there specifically for families with Alzheimer's with limited resources. It would probably be all of your normal things that would be available to any family that has limited resources. So I would say the Alzheimer's Association might be a good place to check first. They're a great resource and they know a lot about what's going on. Also your local governmental agencies in terms of financing and things like that, Medicaid, et cetera.
Good. Well, we are out of time, but I think y'all have done a great job for the little amount of time that we gave you. We do have a gift for the speakers. Faith, do you want to come up with me? No, you're good. All right. So we want to thank you for participating in our symposium. So you get the coveted Bar Association tumbler. Who passed that down? Which you can put red wine in.
Absolutely.
So, everybody, let's thank our speakers today. We really appreciate it. And to conclude, I want to thank everybody for being here and I hope you found it interesting. Our next general membership luncheon will be on Wednesday, February 23rd. Remember to get your CLE certificate as you leave today, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.